Hey everybody! Hope you guys are all having a wonderful summer at the moment because today I want to talk about college because I got my bachelor's degree last year and I'm currently working my master's at the moment. And I bet there are some of you out there that are going to college or about to graduate or just graduated. So I thought I'd talk about that because while it's not a very common career path for some people, for there are people who join the military after they graduate from high school, or even go on a completely different path that has nothing to do with college. But that's okay. Because for here, I want to take some time to talk about it because I have gone to college myself. And I thought I'd talk about my experiences going through college and perhaps give my take or advice on how to go through it. And because while a lot of this stuff isn't related to me being autistic, I mean, there are some parts that do kind of resonate with some of the people who are autistic and are also going to college and deal with struggles related to being autistic. I do think that there's a lot to talk about that I would like to share with you guys. So with that said, let's get started. But first, I want to give a shout out to the class of 2021 for congratulations, guys. If you're graduating this year, 2021, or just did, you've gone through quite a bit, I bet. It's been a rough year. I can sort of sense that with the Zoom calls taking the place of in-person classrooms. Not much opportunity to go outdoors. The economy is kind of stagnating and slowing down a little bit with all these shutdowns and unemployment slowly on the rise gradually. And so much going on in this world that's just chaotic and kind of messy. And just trying to make sense of it all. But no matter what happened, you did it. That's the most important part. Because you completed a major chapter in your life. And you're now about to move on to the next. To me, a college degree isn't just about going to class and just learning the material you need for your major. It's also about personal growth. Getting out what you put into it. And being able to see the results of what you put into college. How much you invest into your time in college. And being able to reap its rewards. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. And I bet that this is kind of a confusing time to graduate, and I can sort of relate because I graduated myself. I did during a pandemic as well. For I remember last year when there was a lockdown on the last day I spent on campus, last day I didn't know of. I remember grabbing some poke bowls and I grabbed some drinks on campus and not knowing what's going to happen because it was around, I think, March of 2020, like the first couple of weeks that people were thinking about shutdowns or lockdowns, but they weren't certain of it. So I just went through that day, my last day on campus, not knowing if that would be my last. And then lockdown came and I was thinking, hey, great. I can sleep in a little bit more. I don't have to prepare myself every morning and drive to school and beat the morning traffic. I don't have to do all of that. I can just wake up, prepare myself, and then go straight to class. But on the other hand, I do kind of miss certain things that came with the in-person class setting. Because while I'm a bit of an introvert and don't mind being at home a lot more, I do miss being able to connect with people a lot more and being able to meet with them in person. There's just something about connecting with people on a personal level that you don't quite get when you're in a virtual setting. And on top of that, studying at home is kind of a pain because there's a lot of distractions at home. There's people working at home, my dad playing guitar, my sister singing, my mom working too, having meetings too. So like everyone just at home, doing work. So there's just a lot going on. And then you have the dog too. My dog, Jasper, who barks and has his needs, and there's just so much going on that it's hard to just have a moment for yourself to focus on your education. And then something related to that is this blurry separation between college and home life. Because what I like about in-person is that I get to separate my home life from college life. Because the moment I leave my home is the moment I leave behind all my concerns, all my worries that are related to my personal problems, and anything that has to do with my family. I can just put that behind and then go to college and focus on nothing but the world of higher ed. I can separate. There's like a physical separation and sort of a mental one. But then doing things at home, that separation is not as strong because I'm going to class at home. I lose a bit of privacy, essentially since when I'm doing webcam with Zoom calls, calling into a virtual classroom setting, I kind of lose that privacy because when you turn on the camera, they can see part of your home. And not to mention, you don't have sort of that you're not in the environment that kind of forces you to be productive. Because when I look at other students that are studying in school, it kind of makes me want to be productive too. I am what I emulate based on the environment around me. But then at home, it's easy for me to be lazy since I'm not surrounded by people that sort of inspire me to be productive. A lot of it is just pretty hard, and a lot of it requiring a lot of internal motivation and personal responsibility on my part. I mean, not that I am someone who's super dependent on people to give me that motivation, but it just kind of helps to be around people that are just as motivated as you are when it comes to education. So a lot of issues like that just made virtual meeting difficult, and my struggle with just trying to adjust to that really did cost my grades. For I did pretty well in my math courses. Got pretty high grades, like A's, maybe B pluses, but then it kind of tanked toward the end. Though, for I remember getting an F on the final for one class, but luckily I passed because I had such a high grade that it was able to cushion this fall that I've experienced towards the end of the semester. And while I did pass, I can't quite say the same for a lot of people. For, I think during the pandemic, some people dropped out, decided to take a 1-year break from school, not being able to deal with things virtually, or preferring to invest in education when everything just goes back into in-person again. There's just a lot to in-person that you can't replace with a virtual kind of solution. So little things like that kind of made it very difficult, but sort of made me feel grateful for it based on the kind of lessons I learned trying to do everything on my own and being more independent, and how it kind of forced me into that route. And so with that said, what else? Oh, graduation. So graduation wasn't really what I expected either because of the pandemic, because a couple of years ago, me and my friends were going to plan to pre-game before graduation. So that way when we walk the stage and, get our diploma, we do it with style and fun. Just something to kick off the end of our last year in college. And probably go out to eat after that. But a lot of that just gotta be scrapped. And so what we end up having is a virtual graduation where we had this card and that has our name on it, our picture, and this quote that we want to put on there. Anything special that you want to put down there. So for mine, it had my name, my major, and then my picture, and then a special quote for me, which was from John 20:29. Blessed are those who not have seen and yet have believed. Yeah, that was my personal quote for my placard. And basically, it was a collection of slides like that for me and all the other graduates that we can view on our own time. And then you also have videos of graduation speeches, pre-recorded. And while it's kind of nice to not have to worry about scheduling and having to do things rigid, and being able to also have that convenience of watching things on your own time, I do miss that feeling of doing things in person. The crowds cheering, just being able to shake hands with faculty and your own professors. There's that kind of bonding experience that you don't quite get with a virtual setting. But that was kind of the cards we were dealt with, and so I dealt with it. And most of all, I did it, as well as many others of my class. And I bet it's sort of the same for your class, the class of 2021, as well. And I think that's kind of a good way to put it. So, with all this talk about college and high school and all of that, I bet for some of you, you're probably wondering about what happens next after college. It's always that last thing on your mind when you're going through school. For it's always about that destination and not about what happens after. And I gotta say, that was something that I didn't quite think of either when I graduated. For I had a little bit of a sort of doubt about my own future at that point, like a sort of a pseudo existential kind of crisis that went through. Because I didn't plan for what I was going to do after. I just knew that I want to get my bachelor's. And so while there's certainly a lot of things I want to talk about related to that part, I am going to leave it towards later on in the pod. Because for this podcast, I want to also bring some attention to my experiences in college and talk about it. And while there certainly are a lot, I'm going to break it down into form of questions. So that way we can proceed through it in an incremental manner. And also if you only want to hear answers to specific questions and not the whole podcast. But you're welcome to listen to all of it. Okay, so the first question up is, why do I want to go to college? Well, you see, I wanted to go to college because growing up, I've always had this affinity for math. I used to tutor struggling math students for AP Calculus, for AB, and I guess a little bit of BC sometimes in high school, where I was. And so around that time, I've kind of realized that I was not only good at math, but I was also good at teaching people and connecting with people, because it was also a good opportunity to meet friends and to practice my social skills, things that are actually very useful for my career. And so when I graduated high school, I didn't really think too much about what I wanted to do. But there's one thing that I was certain of, was the fact that I was good at math and that I knew how to teach, and I really enjoyed it, and especially through tutoring. And so when it came that question of what to do next, the only thing I knew was math and being good at teaching and tutoring people. And so I thought, what kind of career could I get that combined those two? My love for just connecting with people and also math, my affinity for it. So I thought, what about being a math teacher? I teach people and I do things related to a major that I'm proud of, math. And so I thought, okay, let's be a math teacher. So I realized then I had to go to college to be a math teacher. So I went to a community college to sort of have a cheaper way to really explore my interests. Because while I sort of had this sense I want to be a math teacher, I wasn't too confident in it because it was more on a whim and just not having anything else to do. And I didn't want to blow money trying to invest time into a major that I might end up regretting. I want that flexibility. So in case I don't like math anymore, I can major in something else and do it without much hassle. Because, as I might tell you guys later on in this podcast, because at a 4-year, the hassle for switching majors increases because of, maximum capacity for how many people that could be majoring in this field, and not to mention just money and time and all that. Whereas at CC, nothing is set in stone. So with that kind of flexibility at a CC, I decided to go there to explore my major and to work on an AST in math, which is 2 years less than a full 4-year degree, and sort of allows me to sort of get something that can measure my progress in college. Sort of like a halfway point. So I went to community college and did my associate's degree for transfer in mathematics. And it was around that time that I dug my claws into applied math through these research projects that I did in class. Because while I did like tutoring, I also loved doing research. I love being able to be curious intellectually about the things that I'm learning. For when it comes to learning things, I don't believe in indoctrination. I like to explore, play with the things that I'm learning, and be able to use what I'm learning to sort of make sense of the world around me. And so it was that kind of inquisitive mindset that kind of drew me more towards research. And it was from there that I discovered my love for research and being curious about the world around me. And so from there, I kind of dabbled a bit into applied math. And I ended up dabbling it so deep into it through these class projects that I did outside of class, as well as actually having some published research projects that are out there and viewable by the public, that I began to realize how much I really love research. And thus my interest in math kind of grew in a different direction, away from sort of the teaching aspect and more towards the theoretical kind, the more applied route. So that's when I realized, okay, I like math, but I want to do more than that. I want to do research. So I ended up majoring in applied math when I transferred from community college to San Jose State University. So I did my bachelor's in applied math, and I added a minor in CS, computer science. So I did that for 2 years, and then I graduated. And it's around that time when, as my interest in research evolved, so did my passion for community service. And I did Best Buddies, where I volunteered to sort of be a peer buddy for people with learning disabilities, which kind of motivated my interest in being passionate about social justice, supporting the community, and creating an equitable, inclusive environment for all. Things like that kind of took me towards the volunteer route. But as I started to get down to the volunteer route and explore that while I was in college, I realized that it wasn't that practical, for I didn't want to put all my research skills and math skills that I've accrued at that point to waste. So after I got my bachelor's, I was trying to figure out, okay, where can I combine research with my passion for social issues? Where can I combine that? And that was when statistics came into play, which I was introduced to through this undergraduate course that I took on the path to getting my bachelor's, which introduced me to creating experiments, all these little techniques that people use in their research papers, such as creating studies, creating control groups, getting sample data, and then creating some quantifiable metrics that you can then use to evaluate the results of your research, which is pretty much what statistics is all about, the methodology behind all of these methods to do study groups, experimental groups, control groups, all of that. Because statistics, it is related to math, but unlike math, it doesn't have to be STEM related. For the applications of statistics have a lot of social science implications, such as education policy, or the medical field, or even in government, where there's a lot of statistics and data that statisticians would gladly look into. So that's when I thought, okay, statistics. I want to do statistics. So what I ended up doing after getting my bachelor's was that I started applying for a master's in statistics to different schools. And eventually I managed to get accepted into one school, CSU East Bay, where now here I am currently working on my graduate degree in statistics, with the goal of someday being able to do research in the public sector, doing public policy, being able to inform it, and all of that. Because while public policy is kind of a dry field and it doesn't involve working with students and people, I value a lot of the impact that it has on decision making at the government or administrative level, which can then trickle down to serve the communities that I care about. Whether it's low-income communities, people from different minority groups, things like that. So that's kind of why I've wanted to go to college, despite how long my answer is and how kind of complex it is. So, as complex as it may be, hope that gives you guys a sense of why I wanted to go to college. Okay, next question. what are 3 major challenges that I faced getting through college? Well, one of them is definitely burnout. Because as I got through higher ed, the course material that I was learning got even more complex and a lot more theoretical. For unlike high school, there's a lot more critical thinking that you have to do. You have to sort of think on your own a lot more. Where it's not just about plugging and chugging and memorizing what the teacher teaches you. It's also about knowing to understand what you're being taught and being able to apply it to the problems that you're trying to solve. So there's a lot of that independent thinking for me that I had to kind of deal with. So because of that, I had to study a lot harder, and then I had to read a lot more to make sure that I not just know the material, but understand it, and to the point where I can apply it for problem solving reasons. And also I had to pay attention even harder in class, which isn't easy with my low attention span, for it's so easy for me to get lost in the whole scheme of things. When you have a teacher teaching and then you have students asking questions and students who process things a lot faster than I do. And for me, trying to process things to the point where by the time class ends, I pretty much have processed everything, but at the cost of not having much one-on-one time with teachers who are probably busy or have things to do and probably have very narrow windows for office hour opportunities. And then on top of that, I also had to juggle part-time jobs, internships, extracurricular activities, and outside stuff like joining college clubs, volunteering, things that aren't very necessary to do well in college, but they're valuable things that you could put on your resume. For it's not enough to just from my understanding of job marketing, it's not enough to just have a degree. It's also important to have skills that are marketable and experiences that sort of help you stand out among a crowd of hundreds of thousands of applicants who are applying to probably the same jobs that you're applying to. And while it kind of sucks though, because it's just vague about how much experience you need, it's sort of kind of necessary, pretty much, if you want to survive in this job market, to have extra things or do things outside of class. And overall, just balancing all of that out. So burnout was definitely a big issue for me. And I kind of alluded to a more independent mindset, though, just learning to be a critical thinker. Especially since in college, I get to make my own schedule. I can drive myself to school. I also have to take initiative to ask for help if I need it. Because it's not like high school, where high school teachers basically kind of baby you, where they check on you to make sure you're doing well on their own time. You don't have to do anything. They approach you. And then whereas in college, you kind of have to do the approaching. A professor may even open their doors, but it's kind of left up to you generally to take the initiative to reach out to them. And then you can also say the same thing for job opportunities and all of that. For you're not handed job opportunities, you have to actually dig for them. And sometimes it could take hours to look for the right opportunities for you. Opportunities where you have a higher chance of being hired for. And employees have a higher chance of accepting you. So kind of a lot of digging on your own for the most part. It's things that I wasn't used to that I had to learn quickly if I ever wanted to do well in college. And then lastly, is planning out my career and time in college. For on the career side, just trying to find and apply for jobs and internships. It's just super competitive because you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of people who want the same jobs you do. And then also just finding the right ones that fit my major and fit my needs. For while I live in Silicon Valley, there's just a huge saturation of computer science majors, software engineering, computer engineering, a lot of these hardcore technical majors, to the point where there's not much room for math majors. I mean, there are positions here, such as for data science, which does involve math majors, which are pretty open to math majors. But those opportunities are few and far between, and they tend to be pretty biased towards computer science majors. So being able to find a job as a math major is kind of a pain to deal with. I mean, it's possible, but it's just a lot of hard work, digging, and preparing yourself, your resume, all of that. So just really complicated stuff, and not to mention getting job skills and learning more outside of class. Such as for me, picking up programming books so I learn how to code. Not just know how to collect data and all that, but just learn how to code, which is a very common necessity now in the industry. So for me, that would mean picking up books, learning how to code in Python, learning how to do data science or machine learning with Python and C++ or Java, all these big languages that are really popular for data analysis and which is everything, almost anything in general, especially considering how much we depend on computers now than compared to 80 years ago or even 20 years ago. So, yeah. And then there's lastly just juggling my personal life and trying to connect with people in college. Or it's a lot harder than I thought. Because in college, you're kind of surrounded by commuters sometimes. People who just go to class and just go home and not get involved in extracurricular activities and all of that. Not to mention there's this imposter syndrome too that I sometimes feel around other students. For I'm not just paired with undergrads, I'm also paired up with graduates. Students who have way more experience and knowledge and all of that more than I do. And sometimes that can be intimidating to me because not only I have a hard time trying to relate to them, they also are kind of keeping to themselves and are just more focused on their own goals. So that can be very intimidating, and sometimes I would doubt myself whether I deserve to be in college just because of supposedly how smarter they seem, when perhaps while I can't control, how they're doing, I can control how I do about it. And instead of sort of being jealous of them, maybe I should look up to them in a way and learn from it, because college is a place to learn and grow, and it's now helped to me to try to think of it as they're better than me kind of mentality, which kind of puts me in a hard spot where I'm not going to work hard because I feel other people are better than me, so what's the point of trying hard? All these kind of weak thoughts that do very little to help me progress in college. So, with that said, that's kind of what I generally went through in college. Okay, next question. How do you overcome these challenges that you're facing? Well, while I'm still dealing with these challenges, even for my graduate degree, I deal with it through some of the following ways. So when it comes to attending lectures, I try my best to take extra notes, more than necessary. Maybe perhaps pay attention to what the professor's saying, because it's often the case that the professors don't always cover everything that you need to know from the textbook. They might cover more than necessary, or they might say things that you might not understand at first, so extra notes have to be taken. And where do you get those extra notes? It comes from reading the textbook, maybe Googling the material, maybe even asking your classmates and trying to see if they can understand what the professor is saying, or even asking more questions in class to get better clarification. Because I think that while there can teachers that deliver well or good at teaching, not everyone's going to learn the same way or understand things the same way. So I think that when it comes to dealing with just understanding the course material, I try to be as proactive as I can to make sure that I not only know the material, but understand it. So that means asking repetitive questions until I truly get it, to the point where I don't need the teacher to explain the material to me, that I can figure it out myself and all that. I also try to do office hours to make sure that I get more one-on-one time to get to know the professor and sort of connect with them. For professors aren't just people delivering material, they're also experts in their fields, as well as sort of your impromptu career mentors, for they were once students like you. So they could be a great source of career advice and personal life advice or academia advice. So those are some things that I do to sort of make the most out of my time in college. All right, as for scheduling, I use an app, Tick, to sort of schedule my day. And it's a very wonderful app. It's free, although you have to pay premium to get extra features. But basically what this app does is that it allows you to set up multiple tasks at specific times to specific dates and set up an alarm for that. And it'll remind you of those tasks that you put on this list of tasks using the app. And the great thing I like about it is that it allows you to break a task into mini tasks. And it also allows you to set reminders as many days you want early in advance. That way you don't forget certain things and all that. Sort of a very convenient way for me to keep track of what I need to do for the day. And it's especially important, especially when I have all these big assignments, and sometimes it can be easy for me to get overwhelmed with the kind of content that I'm learning. So having a schedule, or particularly a scheduling app, really helps with that. So if you guys are into that app, do check it out, tick.com, or look up Tick on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for iOS. Pretty good app, highly recommend it. Hope you guys check that out. And then lastly, friends. When it comes to friends, I try to do some of the following. I try to ask my classmates questions, or I try to form study groups, just so that way I get opportunities to sort of get to know them and also have a reason to sort of connect with them. Because if there's anything that can make the learning experience valuable, it's connecting with fellow students who are going through the same thing you're going through. So I would try to ask questions, such as along the lines of, hey, did you get what the professor's saying? Or, hey, how did he get that answer? Do you know how he gets it? So things like that allows me to get more conversation time with other classmates. And also, believe it or not, maybe some of those guys might end up being friends. Or even potential connections for work. Right? So little things like that. In the event that I don't get to hang out with my classmates, I try other things, such as join clubs that interest me, clubs that are related to things that I love. It doesn't have to be academic related. It can also be personal too. Because if there's anything that can be boring, it's just going through college, just focusing on yourself a lot, and it kind of feels lonely that way, without having some kind of social life. So joining clubs or extracurricular activities is a pretty good way to develop some semblance of a social life in college. There probably, at your school, wherever your schools you're going to, there might be an archery club if you're into archery. There might even be a book club or a video gaming club. Tons of clubs out there. And if you're into kind of into the bonding, brotherhood, sisterhood type, you can also join frats or sororities and all that. Although I've never been to a frat, but there are just many options out there for any of you who want to make new friends or connect with people more outside of class. So that's kind of my way to do it. There certainly are other ways, but that's just kind of how I deal with friends and making friends in college. Because while I may not be able to be friends with them after college, for all of them, I can at least have some friendly interaction, have some semblance of a social life while I'm studying in school. Because just studying and preparing for tests and finals can be very overwhelming, but it's less overwhelming when you get to share and engage in the college experience with other students that are going through similar things as you are. So that's kind of my tidbit on it. Okay. What are some of the best things you've gained from college? Well, I think one thing is the ability to meet with like-minded students and professors who share my interests and my values and are mature and responsible. Because unlike high school, people have a choice in wanting to go to college in generally. Because high school, everyone has to go to high school, but in college, you don't have to, and you're more likely to be surrounded by people that share your interests or your values or your passions for certain things. Not to mention getting to meet professors and professionals and network with them. For they were once students like you, and they probably have a breadth of knowledge on their respective fields, or just advice on career and how to be successful in college that might be useful to you. Lots of valuable things to learn from other people and connect with them, especially people that you're likely to get along with or be cool with. There's also one other thing that I think is really valuable to me, besides the major and being able to explore my passion in math. And I think one crucial thing is being able to embark on this journey of personal development and growth. Because throughout my time getting my bachelor's, I just learned so much about myself through the opportunities I took, whether it's joining Best Buddies, which I mentioned in my first podcast for season 1 of the Autism Experience, and the people I worked with and met along the way who taught me so many things about how to live life, sort of inspire me to do the things that I do now. And so many things like that that just kind of inform me about what I want out of this world. What do I want to do for myself? And what do I see myself in the next 5 to 10 years? Because when I started college, I was a bit of a fish out of water, where I'd never thought about going to college. In fact, I never even thought about getting my master's degree, for I'm kind of the first in my family to be considering that. Because my mom and my sister stopped at getting a bachelor's degree. And I remember being very hesitant about getting a master's degree after a bachelor's. For I was kind of motivated to do a bachelor's just because of just not only my passion, but also just seeing that my mom and dad did it and others have done it before, and feeling that if they could do it, I could do it. And then for me, a master's, just being in sort of a fish out of water again, only that I have no frame of reference since, well, I don't think hardly anyone in my family has ever attempted doing a master's, particularly my immediate family. So it's kind of new, but there's a lot to learn from. For I not only met industry professionals or people that have been there, done that when it comes to my field of interest, there's also a lot of things I learned in regards to discipline, hard work, and learning to just live with purpose. Because back then when I first started college, I was pretty young and indecisive with a lot of baggage from the past. Trauma, bullying, just lonely, didn't have a lot of friends, all that stuff. But based on everything I've learned so far and in college and what I got out of my undergrad, I came out of college, I came out as someone with just a lot of grit and a sense of purpose and fulfillment and a lot more faith in the world. Because I've come to realize that even if you started out with a bad hand or a bad set of circumstances, you could still, it's not too late to get beautiful things. I mean, I may have failed to find some friends in high school and middle school, but I can still find happiness wherever I can be, for it's not too late to get those things. It's not too late to get friends, and it is still possible that you will be able to find people that you will get along with that want to be friends with you. Things are out there, and all it takes is faith and grit to really get there. Because by believing yourself, you recognize that agency that you have in your own lives and your own actions. And taking ownership of that is what's going to help you get there. For it helped me get through my undergrad, and it's going to help me get through my master's. And I'm pretty confident that just recognizing these things will certainly help you get to where you want in college. For sure. Okay, so next question. What is one thing that you're proud of doing in college? Well, I think one of the biggest things I've accomplished is volunteering for more than 300 hours at different community events. I mean, in high school, I joined a leadership program, the JRTC, which is this military leadership program, where I learned about sort of the traditions of the military branch that was serving the JRTC program that I went to, which in this case was the Marine Corps, learning about the values and the missions and beliefs of the Marine Corps, as well as learning about and practicing the tenets and principles of leadership that are necessary to be a good leader and a responsible citizen, not just in the workplace, but in life. And it's through that I was able to volunteer for all kinds of events and meet all kinds of wonderful people and get some perspective on the world. For I met former members of the military. I've also got to go to different communities volunteering, whether it's the Lunar Festival, where I get to set up booths and events to sort of honor the lunar calendar and be able to meet people outside of my community, such as the Chinese American community. Or when I did the Veterans Day Parade, where I did a lot of color guard, where I held the flag and held these fake rifles and marched with fellow veterans to celebrate Veterans Day. All these things that sort of just show me how diverse the world around me is and just gave me some perspective in that, and meet all kinds of people. And then outside of JRTC in college, I also volunteered for Best Buddies, where I did the peer buddy system, where for a whole year I connected with a student with a learning disability and got to know him and connect with him, and to do things that friends do, hang out together, meet and have fun and all that stuff. Experiences like that allow me and the other person to meet friends that we would not normally meet, or people outside of our comfort zone, and just learning how to get along with each other. There's also volunteering for History Park or all these things and all of that, all of which kind of helped to sort of bring out my love for being in the community. Because one thing I love about people is just the stories that they tell. The fact that there are probably people out there that are like me, that are autistic, who are going through similar challenges, and being able to sort of understand them and connect with them. Because if there's one thing that motivates me to be a volunteer, it's the fact that while I did have some struggle growing up as a child, I hope that no one else has to go through that. Because having seen how cruel people can be to each other, especially having been sort of the victim of such cruelty, I've come to feel that if there's anything that could bring more light into this world and help sort of break or end this cycle of cruelty or bullying that's affecting kids, no matter where we're at or what time period, the only way we can break that and sort of break this cycle of trauma that I've experienced in the past is to sort of try to bring my own light into the world. Instead of radiating hate and prejudice, why not radiate love and understanding and respect? Why not help people so that way they can have a better life, better childhood than I did growing up? Because while I didn't have the best childhood, I could make up for it by making sure people could have the best childhoods they have. I could play a part and help them achieve better lives, though, and help them overcome it. Because I've sort of been there before. And I understand how precious happiness is. And if there's anything I can do to keep that alive, it's by working towards it and helping others achieve that. So that's the thing that motivates me to be a volunteer and motivates me to do this podcast where I get to share my thoughts on it and connect with people that have similar experiences I do, as well as people who of all different backgrounds who are struggling in their own ways and want nothing more than empathy, compassion, and respect, for who they are, and support for their growth into the best version of themselves that they want to be. Things like that sort of drive me to be a volunteer. And that's something that I think is probably the biggest highlight of my college experience. Volunteering. Not just in terms of what it brings to me, the light that it brings into my life, but also the light that it brings to the world around us. For I think that there is hope in this world. And all we have to do is continue to fight those dark impulses that want us to lose hope, and to continue to radiate light wherever we can. Not just for us and this generation, but for the next generation and afterwards, so that way people can continue to enjoy the fruits of happiness that we all love and value and take for granted. Okay, I think this is a bit of a mouthful. I mean, we're almost close to an hour of this podcast. I know I kind of talk a lot, but I feel this is really important things to talk about and kind of really speaks to what motivates me in life. But we do have one more question, and that is, what advice do you give to college-bound students or anybody currently in college right now? What advice would you give them? For me, here's my advice. Your journey in college is determined by how much you invest or put into it. Because college isn't just about going to class, going home, and studying for grades. There's a lot more than that. It's also about people. It's about opportunity. Seeing beyond your walls, experiencing the world around you, and making the effort to know and build yourself up and let yourself shine, regardless of what people think of you. Because college, to me, is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you don't get very often, so which is why it's important to make the most out of it. Do things like try to get involved as much as you can in college campus, meet people, apply for internships, join clubs that you're into, and just keep doing those things. Because even if you mess up at times, just keep on going, keep on learning as much as you can, and most of all, keep on living and looking forward to what you find in college. Because it's not about where you go or what you get in the end. It's also about what you do when you get there and what you make of the things you find along the way. Because while we can't control everything that happens to us, we have a duty to ourselves to recognize what we can control in our lives. For we do have agency not over what other people think of us or what happens to us, but how we move forward from here. And because once we recognize that agency and how much of it we have over our own actions and how we can proceed from a given situation, and how much agency we have over how we see the world, we not only get to take back power over our own lives, but put ourselves in the best position possible to achieving our own happiness. All right. I think that's all I have for today. It's a bit long. We're cutting it close to 50 minutes right now, or even a little bit more. But thank you all for listening to this podcast. And because I really appreciate it, hope the class of 2021, hope you guys are doing well and you are, doing well to really think on these things and really embarking on your next chapter in your lives, wherever that may be. But above all, for all of you, thank you all for listening, and hope you guys enjoyed the content of this podcast, and I hope you guys stay tuned for the next podcast. So, take care. Hey, thank you guys so much for listening to my podcast. If you guys like this channel, check out and subscribe to it on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you guys get your podcasts. For social media, you can follow my Instagram account at The Autism Experience. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more from The Autism Experience.